The new wave of political leaders gaining a momentum and also seizing power in Africa, particularly in Francophone Africa, there's a common narrative, and everybody agrees with this kind of narrative, is to actually have and see Francophone Africa fully independent. And when we're looking at the notion of independence, it's not just a political independence, but it is an independence that's going to be present at every level of the public life of a nation. And I'm talking about economic independence, I'm talking about military independence, I'm talking about cultural independence, and I'm talking about social independence. But for the sake of this episode, I'm going to focus only at military independence because this is, a follow-up of my previous episode discussing the French military presence in Francophone Africa. And this episode is going to look at the recent, declaration from President Diomaye Faye of Senegal, where he actually decided, or where he actually said, and I'm actually paraphrasing, that Senegal might actually in the near future demand, the departure of French troops from its land. Welcome to your favorite podcast, Smart, Intellectual, Knowledgeable African. I'm Philippe S.I.K.A, and as always, it's a pleasure to be with you. If you're not yet a member of our amazing community of young African intellectuals and of people who are strongly passionate about Africa's development, all you have to do is just to click on the subscribe button and to also activate the ring bell so that you will no longer miss out on any of the interesting episodes that I released weekly. Well, first of all, my question is, what do you think of this declaration from President Diomaye Faye? Do you think it's a shocking one? Do you think it's a bold move? Do you think it's too arrogant? Do you think it's inappropriate? Well, let me know what you think in the comment section. But in my opinion, in my view, first of all, it's shocking. It's not shocking coming from President Diomaye Faye. It's shocking coming from Senegal. And you will understand why I say that. The reason why I say that, first of all, is because of the former President Macky Sall. 10 years ago, President Macky Sall made no effort to hide his personal feelings when it comes to France, which is actually quite okay. I mean, you are free to develop, a specific or a special attachment or a special preference to a country. But I personally believe that when you are a head of state, there is a position and there is a poker face that should always keep, especially when it comes to diplomatic relationship, but most importantly, when it comes to protecting and prioritizing your country's interests. I mean, you should always prioritize your country's interest over any other interest. I think that's the reason why you are the head of the state. But my point here is just to highlight the fact that President Macky Sall always made the most weird and the most uncomfortable, public statement when it came to looking at the relationship between France and Senegal. I don't know if you remember, but he made one very interesting declaration regarding the former Senegalese soldiers who actually fought during World War I and II, when he said that France and Senegal friendship is very strong because during those sad hours, while the rest of African soldiers were receiving a minimum fair treatment, Senegalese soldiers were actually better treated because they were receiving dessert, like after dinner or after food, and I'm paraphrasing. But the whole idea was to just say in a very amusing way that, because the Senegalese soldier, got dessert over perhaps like Ivorian soldiers or Malian soldiers or Burkinabe soldiers. That explains the particular relationship that France and Senegal have. And perhaps there's nothing wrong with that. But I mean, considering the context, considering the fact that at the head of state, you did not stress the fact that, France did not pay the right and the correct amount of respect to African soldiers in general, but to Senegalese soldiers specifically, to me, it's a bit problematic because it seems to present your approach as, a very cherry-picky one. You only choose to see what you want to see, and you choose to actually condone the bigger picture, which is to actually fight for the former Senegalese soldiers and their families to actually get the recognition they need and they deserve. So what I'm trying to say here is that we are literally, it's very shocking because we just left a tenure under which the former president literally would have never had the courage, would have never fathomed to make such a statement from a new era, a new tenure in which in less than 100 days, the new president is already announcing a new change. And this is actually very brave. So this takes me to my second analysis of this statement, where I actually view this kind of declaration as very positive. This is very interesting. This is very positive because we now have a clear separation from the former government with the former debatable statement of President Macky Sall with a new generation, which clearly, did not have any problem, I think, but which is also making the international community understand that they are present, to work for Senegal. They are present to work for the people. And I'm not going to debate the rationale behind the fact that there is a French military presence in Senegal. I've already discussed it in episode 42 and 43. So I will save my analysis for this for now. But I want you to understand that it's very interesting. First, it's shocking because President Macky Sall being in office, this kind of statement would have never seen the light of day. But now, thanks to his departure and thanks to the new generation being in power, we now have a president who is able to literally talk about real issues and real problems. So it's very laudable, from President Diomaye Faye to openly alert French authorities regarding their coming decision. And the third aspect to also consider when assessing this statement is all the political correctness. What I call political correctness is what you'd call diplomacy. And diplomacy is very important. If you're looking at, the current trend in West Africa when it comes to Francophone countries, Francophone African countries demanding the leaving of French troops, it actually happened in a very difficult, context. For instance, I can think of Mali, in 2022, Burkina Faso in 2023, and Niger in 2023, when they actually demanded, the departure of the French troops from their land. I mean, it was a bit touchy. It was difficult. It was not in such a nice and diplomatic way as in the Senegalese context. So I think this is also very important to stress. The point here is not to say that the French soldiers must remain in Africa, but the point is for African authorities to learn from, what Senegal is currently doing, to learn from President Diomaye Faye. Well, it's very important, to gain military independence and military integrity by not having foreign army on a domestic soil, but we should also think about how such a request is also made And definitely, I think this is a very good move because I'm pretty sure in 2025, they will definitely leave Senegal. They will also leave Chad, because the president of Chad also made the same request. It's not a request at the time I'm making this podcast, and it's also not a request in Senegal. It's just a notification, and I'm pretty sure that all the administrative procedures will be respected, so that in the nearer future, these two West African countries will also be free of the French presence. But there's a big but, okay? We need to understand that when it comes to the reason why Senegal is demanding the departure of France, the consequences are not the same, and the reasons are not the same are the one in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. And I just want to make one quick comment. Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso first hosted military soldiers because of the former colonial agreement and independence agreement, but they also hosted more French troops because all three countries are actually fighting against terrorism, which is not the case when it comes to Senegal. So this is a very important distinction to make. So when looking at the current landscape regarding the French army in West Africa, especially in Francophone West Africa, we need to understand that currently, as I'm making this episode, there's no longer a French army in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. And in 2025, there might no longer be a French presence, a French military presence in Senegal and in Chad. So where exactly in Africa are we going to still have and see a French presence? Well, we're going to continue seeing French soldiers, in Côte d'Ivoire, where the total troops is roughly 600 soldiers. There will also be a French military presence in Gabon with 350 soldiers. And lastly, in Djibouti, which is actually their largest base, with 1,500 soldiers. So my guess is what might happen in 2025 or 2026 is that after they're leaving from Senegal and Chad, they might increase their presence in Côte d'Ivoire, in Gabon, and also in Djibouti. But will Côte d'Ivoire, Gabon, and Djibouti also demand the departure of the French soldier? Under which circumstances? Let me know what you think of this very interesting episode. And don't forget to click on the like button if you've enjoyed this episode. It will really support the channel, and I think it will also support the community, making sure that we can share these powerful perspectives with the most people out there. Thank you for enjoying and for listening to S.I.K.A Talks, the only podcast where strong ideas meet powerful perspectives. À bientôt.